Today, I'm glad to share our work, SoilSense appropriating soil-based microbial fuel cells to create tangible interface. On behalf of our co-authors, UIST2025, Anusha Vihana, and Yuta Sugita.
Could you lift the microphone?
Yeah. Sorry. Okay, let's start with the introduction of soil and how we make a sensing medium out of it. Soil is an interesting material. It is ubiquitous around us and has a complicated chemical and biological composition. And for STI, while being accessible and DIY friendly, soil is a sustainable and biocompatible material that can be returned to the nature without harm. It allows us to fabricate the artifact in a way that is very different from the industrial materials. Sorry. An important application of soil in ubiquitous computing is soil-based microbial fuel cells, or SMFCs for short. These are usually studied as the energy source to power IoT devices, that they can convert the chemical energy stored in the organic compound into the electricity through the living microbes. The structure was quite simple. All we need is soil, the copper wires as the conductor, and the carbon fuse as the electrodes. We bury the anode in the anaerobic environment inside the soil and place the cathode on the top to contact with the oxygen. Its voltage output and strongly depends on the scale, the volumetric water content, which is moisture level, temperature, and so on. However, SMFC is more than energy harnessing devices. In this paper, we recompose them into a sensing medium. Our key observation is that when pressure is applied onto the cathode, we found that its output voltage will be increased. Here I have a small live demonstration here. This is, I'm holding an SMFC, and this is the voltage read by the analog input. So when I'm pressing on it, you can see a very clear voltage variation. So we conclude the reason behind this phenomenon is the unique physical and electrochemical structure of the fuel cells. Normally, the carbon fuse creates small gaps and dry spots that reduce the ionic transportation. The pressure reduces this gap and enhances the reaction. And in fact, that small demo was just made from the soil we collected outside the venue yesterday. And so it's really easy and can be replicated by your own. Okay, let's move on to the evaluation part. We study the relationship between the force and voltage with the effect of the increasing force, sustained force, under the condition of different cathode sites, their force application speed, and different volumetric water content. And for the increasing force, we observe that when the cathode is larger, the peak voltage goes higher, but the recovery back to the baseline was also slower. And when the force was applied more quickly, the rise and falls of the voltage was sharper, but the overall signal profile remained similar. And for the sustained force, we apply different level of forces ranging from 10 to 300 newtons and keep it still for 1 minute. The results show that the voltage gradually declined to about 80 to 90% of the initial value, regardless of the size of the cathode. And when the initial force was larger, the subsequent voltage drop over time was also larger. And finally, we test the effect of the different volumetric water content. When there is more water inside the soil, the voltage response was stronger and faster. In contrast, the drier soil weaker and have weaker and fatter responses. This shows that the VWC can modulate the sensitivity or the reliability of the force sensing. Next, we explore the interaction prototypes to demonstrate how the SMFCs can be turned into tangible interfaces. We create the TPU containers to match the plasticity of the soil itself, and on top, we add rigid leads, make it easier for users to apply forces and ensure that they can be effectively transmitted to the surface. So, and there are many combinations to enable different gestures, like for example, all rocks allowed to press. The twisted one can be rotation, and the separated tab with double cathode can support bending, where the user can press on one side or the other. To further test the sensing capability of these prototypes, we provide simple tests. These plots show the relationship between the voltage and the pressure applied, the rotation angle, and the situation when bending on different sides. And however, the application scenarios of SoilSense can be much more than the prototype we show a bit. At a small scale, SoilSense can be used as a fast and responsive input device. Also, because the soil has a great characteristic of being plastic, so it can be filled into the container of any shape, such as the animal showing here. And we can have a huge design space where the container itself can provide affordance for the interaction. The SoilSense can also be potentially embedded with the context, with the nature or the living plants. For example, embedding like electrodes into the pot plant can open up a new input channel for human-plant interaction. Also, by scaling up, we can create a prototype with multiple cathodes to detect the force distribution and expand the interaction from a spot to a surface. For example, we can detect the pressing with the whole hand, the placement of objects, or the weight distribution. And for outdoors, we can sense the body weight or traffic with a hidden sensor. And here, please allow me to advertise for our poster Soil Town, which is extended from this example application, will be presented tomorrow afternoon, so please do drop by if you are interested. And finally, let's end with some implications and the limitations. First, the SoilSense is DIY friendly for the soil and the carbon fields are cheap and accessible, but some basic SMSC knowledge is still needed in practice. Second, in terms of sustainability, although the soil itself is biocompatible, but the components like carbon fields and copper wires are actually not biodegradable. And on the contrary, they are very durable. Like exploring the alternatives such as the organic conductor will be especially important when we want to embed these devices with plants or living in the nature. And finally, the interpretation of the voltage signal is always context bounded. The target of our work is more of introducing a technique rather than a ready-made system. So the specific applications will require consideration or calibrations. In the paper, we also propose design implication from the perspective of energy budgets and the possibility of SoilSense that operate only on the energy generated by the SMSC themselves. The key takeaway is that there is a trade-off between the interactivity and the energy autonomy. We describe three possible situations: the fully self-powered, allowing only infrequent interactions; the partially self-powered, where the energy harvesting could extend the life of the battery; and plug-in, which offer the richest interactivity but with a relatively higher energy cost. And finally, there are limitations. First, the voltage signals are changeable in practice because there are so many factors, parameters to define the output. And there could be variation during the fabrication process and the environment, which make it difficult to do precise regression or predictions. And the calibration is needed when the changing situations, such as the water vaporization. And second, there's no user study, so how people will sync up when actually using this kind of interface environment. And finally, specific development conditions like coexisting with plants, outdoor weather, or long-term installation was not included in the study. And we acknowledge this limitation as important direction for the future research and hope our work can be a support for the future soil-based or other biocompatible interfaces. And that's all from my presentation. Thank you very much.
All right, any questions from our audience?
Thank you for the talk. I had a question about the reliability of the soil sensing. So is there like a point of failure, like of no return, if you apply like a really big force? Does it like not act the same as before?
There is a possibility because the soil is deformable, and if you add excessive force, like larger than 200 newtons, or actually it's about the pressure, because there's a effect of the area of the force that applied. Because if you have a strong force on a single point, that point might be pressed the cathode inside the soil, maybe not recovering back. But actually in the paper, we test the force like up to 200 newtons, so that's 20 kilograms. So that is supposed most like hand interactions. Okay, thank you.
All right, if we don't have any more questions for now, let's thank our presenters.